The story begins with three boys complaining about another student. Akin says that his classmate is annoying. They talk about Sakamoto, our protagonist, who does everything elegantly, even looks stylish when he does his punishments. So Akin and his friends set up a prank for him by putting an eraser on the entrance, but Sakamoto easily catches it. They get upset and try to pour water on him in the bathroom, but he was already prepared with an umbrella. Akin's group doesn't give up, and they throw Sakamoto's desk and chair out the window, but he doesn't care and sits elegantly at the window. Later, Akin and his friends are upset about their failed attempts, so they plan to kidnap Sakamoto and beat him up. They send a student to take Sakamoto to the science room. When Sakamoto walks in, a floor dryer falls on the door and locks them in. The tie Sakamoto up and debate what to do to him. Their options are to beat him up, throw chemicals on his face, or strip him and take photos of him to send to the girls. So Akin takes a photo of Sakamoto's face, but suddenly they realize that there is a fire in the room because of their cigarettes. When trying to escape, they realize that they are trapped and Akin's cell phone is useless, so Sakamoto, after freeing himself, begins to jump from one side to the other. It seems that he wants to generate a breeze to try to put out the fire. Although the others don't think he can do it, the confidence in his eyes convinces them to join in, and they start jumping along with him. Luckily, the science room is above the staff room, so their jumping is heard, and one of the teachers goes to see what's going on and helps them put out the fire with a fire extinguisher. Once they are saved, Sakamoto reveals that his plan was to get the attention of the teachers so that they would help them, and on top of that, he takes the blame for the fire. This seems so great to Akin that he now admires him. Then we go to see how Sakamoto is in the middle of the rain, competes against a bird to see who is faster, but suddenly, the bird receives a blow and is sent away, so he rushes to catch it, falling into the river where it leans on the wood to get closer and catch the bird. Just as he does, the sky clears. The next day at school, a student named Sarah boasts of being an amateur model, trying to get the attention of the girls, but they are more interested in Sakamoto when they see that he appeared in the newspaper saving a bird. Then Sarah gets annoyed for receiving little attention, and in PE, he tries to hit Sakamoto by throwing balls at him, but he misses. Later, he finds a broken drinking fountain and tries to make a fool out of Sakamoto using it, but it backfires as Sakamoto gracefully drenches himself and poses as a model for the girls. After that, in geometry class, a hornet enters the classroom and scares all the students. The teacher is also scared and says that the hornets attack dark objects that move, and since their school uniforms are black, all the boys start to undress, except Sakamoto, who is calm. Sarah wants to be the hero and tries to kill a hornet with a magazine, but he fails, and then Sakamoto uses the tip of his compass to fight the hornet in a knight's duel. The winner is Sakamoto because the hornet goes out the window. After that, everyone makes fun of Sarah's. He takes it as a joke, and later he asks Sakamoto to do a comedy duet, but he gracefully declines. Chapter 2, days later, while Sakamoto brings food to a bird, he sees how some guys take money from a classmate, Kubota. When the guys leave, Sakamoto asks Kubota what is happening. Then Kubota asks him for help. It turns out that Kubota pays those to not bother him, but he doesn't have any more money. So Sakamoto takes him to a fast food and gets them both jobs. At first, Kubota doesn't like the job and doesn't do much, but since Sakamoto is at the cash register, he attracts a lot of customers, so Kubota has to work harder. And his boss gives him words of encouragement, which motivates him to continue at work and learn more and more about hamburgers. Finally, payday comes. Kubota is excited, thinking what he could spend his money, while Sakamoto wants to buy a protractor. Later, Akshin and his friends show up to buy burgers and ask Sakamoto for his smile, which amuses Kubota. After that, the show up too, and Kubota tries to ignore them, but they threaten him into going to the park. This is overheard by Sakamoto. At night, Kubota goes to the park and the ask him for money. Kubota is about to give them his recently paid salary, but he regrets it and does not give it to them. They get angry and start beating him mercilessly, but Kubota won't let them take his money since he worked very hard to earn it. Luckily for him, Sakamoto arrives to save him and defeats the bullies with his defense techniques, then gives Kubota the opportunity to take revenge on them, and he uses his own secret techniques. After that, the leave and Kubota thanks Sakamoto since he now understood something. What he had to protect was his pride. Sakamoto leaves telling him that his attack techniques lack polish, but are very promising. One day in class, a classmate of Sakamoto's named Aina tries to get his attention, but he is more focused on the class, so she decides to seduce him. First, she tries to sit next to him, but Sakamoto is ambidextrous, so he creates two invisible walls so she doesn't get close. Then she wants to call him by his first name to create a bond of trust, but she doesn't know it, and Sakamoto can't say it on air. Then she tries to imitate him, but he is too fast for her. Finally, she decides to ignore him, so he will pay attention to her. So when she is leaving, he got up from his seat, but it was not because of her. A dog that he saw through the window caught his attention. Aina is frustrated. Until now, no boy has resisted her seduction techniques from her book, so she decides to use another tactic. She invites Sakamoto to play Kokuri-san, but other girls join the game and he decides to watch them. The girls ask Kokuri-san questions and try to move the coin to suit them, but they do it with such force that the coin falls off and possesses Sakamoto. They beg Kokuri-san to leave Sakamoto's body and the fox god agrees, but they must build a sacred arch in 20 minutes. The other two girls start to build the arch with chairs and desks, but Aina doesn't participate, so the girls yell at her that she doesn't really care about Sakamoto. But in the end, when the arch is about to collapse, Aina avoids it and helps them. After that, Sakamoto returns to normal and the girls become friends. That was Sakamoto's plan, since people become close when they accomplish a goal under tense circumstances. Chapter 3. The next day, we meet Maruyama, a boy who uses actions with the excuse of educating them because they are younger than him. And not only that, Maruyama also uses Sakamoto as an errand boy. He calls in with a whistle and Sakamoto appears with snacks served as if they came from a restaurant. Later, Kubota finds out about this and tells Sakamoto that Maruyama uses errand boys as tools and not as people. But Sakamoto says he believes that elders should be respected even if they are only a year older than him. Suddenly, Maruyama whistles and asks Sakamoto for a drink, and he brings him a special mix made from the school drink. Maruyama realizes that he can be very useful. So Maruyama asks him for a lot of errands like sewing his gym clothes, polishing his shoes, giving him massages, filing his nails, and even asking him to go to class in his place. However, this upsets his to think that his leader has become lazy and too dependent on Sakamoto. And the truth is that he has already gotten tired of inventing errands for him to do. It is for this reason that Maruyama tells Sakamoto that he cannot depend on him forever, so now he must invent ways to please him, thus ensuring his comfortable lifestyle. Immediately, Sakamoto complies with his order in unique ways, such as offering him toilet paper when he runs out or warming his shoes when he wants to go. But since his services are so rare, Maruyama starts to get scared and runs away from Sakamoto to the physical education room, and there he calls his friend Hayabusa asking for help. But before trying, Sakamoto had already prepared the entire gym as a room, thinking that Maruyama would spend the night there, even offering to sing a lullaby for him. Maruyama can't take this anymore and fires Sakamoto, so the next day Maruyama is seen buying his own food at the cafeteria, while Sakamoto is sad because he thinks he sings badly. Days later, Sakamoto is at Kubota's house, but suddenly he asks Sakamoto to hide. And at that moment, his mother enters with her face made up and cute clothes. She believed that her son was with Sakamoto. It turns out that all this started 2 weeks ago. Kubota got terrible grades and is at risk of losing the school year, so she asks Sakamoto to be his tutor. But as soon as Kubota's mother sees him, she falls in love with him, and every time he goes home, she pampers him more. So much so that Kubota fears that his family will be broken. So Sakamoto must hide every time he goes to see Kubota. Back in the present, Kubota has to go to school because he forgot his chemistry book there, and before leaving, he gives Sakamoto a phone to continue communicating. As he leaves, Kubota's mother realizes that, although she does not see him, Sakamoto is in the house. She begins to look for him, while Sakamoto does everything possible not to be found. After a while, Kubota's mother is about to give up, but Kubota calls Sakamoto on the phone, revealing his position in the bathtub, although he easily runs away and makes her believe that he has fled through the balcony. Then she watches a dead movie with an actor who looks a lot like Sakamoto, and she says it's easier to give up on someone from TEV. So he decides to do one last trick, throwing a DVD on TV, and jumps in front of the TV and making her believe that he belongs to the world of TV. In this way, Kubota's mother finally gives up, and the tragic love story between them ends. Chapter 4. Another school day begins, and Professor Kakuta is at the entrance of the high school, determined not to let Sakamoto pass at the last minute like he does every day. But Sakamoto comes running with a bamboo, and the teacher thinks he will use it to jump over the fence, so he goes to the other side to stop him. But it was a distraction, so Sakamoto enters the high school without a problem. Later in the staff room, a teacher asks him to go see her class, and Kakuta cheers up, since he can find Sakamoto breaking some rule. While he is looking for him, he sees Sakamoto with ash hands and overhears them talking about something mysterious. He follows them thinking that he will find them smoking, but they are blowing soap bubbles. After that, he goes to Sakamoto's classroom and sees him and other students playing with brooms instead of cleaning the classroom. But a student tells him to take a better look. It turns out that Sakamoto was cleaning the high ceiling with the brooms while he dodges the falling dust. It is time for the education class, and the person in charge of giving it is Professor Kakuta. He is expecting to punish Sakamoto the moment he does something. And amazingly, Sakamoto does something. He starts eating rice in class, and the teacher throws him out of the classroom. Sakamoto leaves, but with some rice in his hand. Professor Kakuta is happy with himself after having punished Sakamoto, but he thinks that maybe he didn't learn his lesson. So he goes out to see him and realizes that Sakamoto got himself punished on purpose. He wanted to go outside to feed a small and sparrow with rice. This moves the teacher and he starts crying. The next day, he is willing to let Sakamoto into school, even if he is late, but he still resents how Sakamoto slips between his legs to get into the school at the last minute. It's time for cooking class. All the girls are happy to be Sakamoto's classmates, since they get to watch him cook, and then fall even more in love when he saves his slug from being cooked. Now it's time for art class. The students have to pair up and draw portraits. Ina manages to team up with Sakamoto, but when he shows her portrait, she thinks he drew her as an orangutan. But it was upside down, and the other girls think that is a cute drawing of Ina. After that, there's a small fire in the chemistry class. So all the students are evacuated, but when they are outside, they realize action is missing. Sakamoto hears this and runs to save his friend, throws a bucket of water over himself and covers his face with a handkerchief. Meanwhile, Akin comes out of the bathroom and is scared to see that no one is there and all the students are outside. Suddenly, Sakamoto arrives and tells him that there is no time for explanation, so he builds an elevator and lowers Akin through a window. But Sakamoto is still inside the building, which worries everyone. And suddenly, Sakamoto appears through the window and jumps using a parachute and reaches the floor safely. Summer vacation begins and Action is making a trap with his friends, and Sakamoto arrives and falls for it to everyone's surprise. However, when they check, they can find him there, so they go to ask Kubota if he has seen him. But he doesn't know anything either. Because of this, they start looking for him, asking different people if they have seen a high school boy in winter uniform. And although many have been spectators of the great Sakamoto, no one has seen him for 4 or 5 days. In the end, Action and the others give up, thinking that Sakamoto has gone far away, even to another city. But then they see how in the trap they dug, there's another deeper hole where they find a button from Sakamoto's uniform. And since they can't see the bottom, Akin theorizes that the hole leads to Brazil. So he decides to go look for Sakamoto in Brazil and jumps into the hole. However, in reality, Sakamoto has been doing his projects outdoors in summer clothes all this time, although he still has something to do. Meanwhile, Action is at the bottom of the hole, which was not that deep, and Sakamoto arrives to see how the project of digging the well continues. Action is very happy to see that Sakamoto did not leave. Chapter 5 days later, we meet Hayabusa, leader of the Maruyama. He is smart, handsome, and has a lot of style. The rest of the praises him in everything. Suddenly, they run into Sakamoto and his fan club, revering him as always. When Maruyama sees him, he runs away feeling sick. Confusing Hayabusa, he asks Maruyama what Sakamoto did to make him so scared, but he evades answering. The other members tell Hayabusa that Sakamoto means problems and that he shouldn't mess with him. But Hayabusa wants to set an example. After all, he is their leader. Later, Sakamoto and Kubota are in their classroom. Kubota wants to cut his hair, but he doesn't know what style. Sarah recommends him to copy his haircut. Suddenly, Hayabusa violently enters the classroom and asks Sakamoto for his face. He is not disturbed and makes a mold of his face out of clay and gives it to him. Hayabusa thinks it's a joke, but quickly has to defend himself from all the girls in the classroom who want to steal Sakamoto's face mold. Hayabusa thinks that our main character controls the whole class, so he breaks the clay mold and tells Sakamoto that he'll see him at the river after school. Kubota is worried about him, but Sakamoto tells him that he will not go because he has to clean the bathroom after school. This is overheard by Hayabusa's henchmen, who make life miserable for Sakamoto, stealing his shoes or school supplies. But Sakamoto always has a solution. Then the run into Kubota and forcibly shave him. When Sakamoto finds out that it is Hayabusa's fault, he gets angry and goes to the river to meet him, but not before giving his friend a wig and telling him that he will recover his identity. At the river, Hayabusa realizes that Sakamoto is really angry. He is about to hit him, but is interrupted by a policeman who tells them that if they fight, they will be arrested. Sakamoto lies that they were going to play pushing sumo, and since the policeman likes that sport, he stays to be the referee. Hayabusa at first doesn't want to fight like that, since it seems like child's play, but as soon as he sees how serious Sakamoto is, he prepares to fight for real, pushing him with all his might, but in reality, it was a feint with which he almost lost the duel. Seeing that Sakamoto is not an easy opponent, he begins to trade blows with him, going on for so long that it even starts to rain. When his friends see that Hayabusa is at his limit, they try to cheat so that he can beat Sakamoto, but Hayabusa doesn't want to win dishonestly. Sakamoto decides that the duel must end now, so he raises one of his hands like an antenna, giving everyone the feeling that he is going to summon the power of lightning. Seeing that things have gotten serious, Hayabusa decides to go with everything he has to beat him, while his friends admit to having provoked Sakamoto, causing Hayabusa to stop and fall into a taxi, since what Sakamoto did was ask for a car. After that, as they leave, Hayabusa apologizes on behalf of his henchmen for provoking Sakamoto, but he is willing to forgive them if they go with him to buy ingredients for dinner. Meanwhile, Kubota is depressed in his room and receives a visit from Hayabusa and his friends. They apologize and give him a lot of wakame, which is good for fast hair growth, but Kubota decides to invite them to dinner since they brought him a lot of wakame. Sakamoto is also there, but hidden. The next day, Sakamoto goes to the school infirmary because he has a fever, and since he doesn't want to rest, he makes himself a green onion tie to get rid of his cold. Chapter 6. One day, some elementary school children are playing to kick a stone until they reach their houses, avoiding all kinds of obstacles until they see Sakamoto playing too. Out of emotion, the leader of the group of children tries to overcome him, but their stones quickly fall into the river. However, Sakamoto has no problem with this even if the stone falls into the river, since he can defy the laws of gravity and can run down the wall along with the stone, frustrating the leader of the children since they were outmatched. The next day, the same children play not to leave the white line on the sidewalk, and they find Sakamoto again playing the same game, and the leader plans to follow him, since if they don't defeat him today, they will never stop being children. On their way, they find a man who stands in the line, but Sakamoto jumps on top of him along with the children, taking them everywhere while they follow the white line. It quickly gets dark, and they find the end of the line. Although the leader of the children knows that Sakamoto can jump up to the next white line, but they are still children and can't jump that far. However, Sakamoto offers him a toilet paper, and since the boy thinks he's making fun of him, he throws it aside, but Sakamoto's real intention was to use it as an extension of the line, and so the children can continue their adventure. In the end, they arrive at the supermarket where Sakamoto says goodbye to them, and before he leaves, the leader rushes to ask him for an autograph. Sometime later, we meet a girl named Megumi who has the hobby of secretly photographing Sakamoto. She is very shy and does not dare to talk to him. One day, she discovers that in her photos there is a ghost following Sakamoto. She worries that he may be in danger. So she goes to tell him, but she realizes that if she does, he will find out about her secret hobby. Due to this, she cannot tell him as she witnesses a cleaning cart approaching Sakamoto, but he uses it as transportation to go down the hall. Later, while he is cleaning, Megumi asks him if he has noticed anything strange. Sakamoto tells her trivial things, but suddenly, he finds a pile of hair in a bathroom sink and he rushes to take it away to put it on Kubota as extensions hair. After that, Megumi gives up and goes to ask Kubota for advice, and he is aware that something strange is happening around Sakamoto, and since he knows he won't notice it himself, he suggests that Megumi show him the photos, hinting that the Sakamoto will not hate her, since she and the ghost has something in common. Later, Megumi goes outside and finds Sakamoto playing with his friends, and she takes many photos of him. Then she comes to the conclusion that she is the same as the ghost, since she only watches him from the shadows. Reviewing the photos, she notices that the ghost moves its mouth differently in each one, realizing that all this time the ghost was trying to express how she feels about Sakamoto. Because of this, Megumi rushes to print the photos and show them to Sakamoto. But when she realizes what she did, she thinks that he will think badly of her. But it is the opposite. This motivates Sakamoto to respond to the ghost and thanks her, causing her to stop appearing in Megumi's photos. And now she can take pictures of Sakamoto with him looking at her camera. Sometime later, Sakamoto realizes that the cafeteria now serves Neapolitan noodles, but since they are not popular, he starts sending subliminal messages to his classmates to make the dish popular, and he succeeds. Chapter 7. Days later, Shane and his group are in the movie store where they try to pass to the adult section without success. There is also Sakamoto, who is looking for a Sparrow movie for his homework. Atkins steals the movie from him before Sakamoto takes it. He will give it to him if Sakamoto rents movies for them. Sakamoto's first obstacle is being able to enter without anyone seeing him. Therefore, to avoid appearing that he wants to enter, he generates a breeze that opens the curtains, and thus he manages to enter, picking up several films. Leaving the forbidden section, Akshan and his group warn him that there are girls from the school in the store and give him instructions on how to avoid them, guiding him through the store. However, in one of the sections, he sees Kubota's mother being forced to run into the girls, but before they find out what movies he has in his hand, he uses one of his secret techniques to divert attention from him. In this way, once they are distracted, Sakamoto takes the opportunity to flee with the films, reaching the cash register. Fortunately, the clerk is new, so it will be easy for him to pose as an adult. Even so, he draws something on his hand before going. As soon as he arrives at the cash register, a boss arrives to attend to Sakamoto. He quickly discovers that he is a teenager and tries to pressure him to stop acting, but Sakamoto passes the interrogation with grace. At the end, Sakamoto shows a watch that he had drawn on his wrist, with which convinces the boss that he is an adult, and in this way, he rents all the movies. Once the mission is over, Akin invites Sakamoto to watch the movies, but he declines the invitation, discouraging the boys who eventually return the movies. Another day at school, Sakamoto is playing ball and Sarah is in charge of stopping him, but as always, Sakamoto achieves his goal without any problems. It turns out that the school sports festival has started and Sarah is willing to captivate the girls with sports. However, his classmates don't think it's possible, since it's very difficult to beat Sakamoto, but Sarah believes that if they all join forces, it could make him lose in some event, so they all come together to try to beat Sakamoto. Then, one of the boys ties Sakamoto's bread tightly, making sure it's impossible to pull out, but as soon as the event starts, Sakamoto holds onto the bread with his mouth and turns vigorously until the bag breaks. But since he sees that everyone else hasn't been able to get their bread out, he decides to share it captivating all women. Then the event of making a human tower comes. Sakamoto climbs on it and it leans like the Tower of Pisa, drawing the attention of the old ladies. Although the boys want to give up, Sarah is not willing to, since there is still the relay race left. As a girl named Yaji prepares, Sarah promises her that he will be the anchor of the team and she shouldn't worry. The race starts and Sakamoto is unable to run, due to Sarah tying his shoelaces together. However, this does not prevent him from running as if he were a cheetah, reaching Yaji, but she cannot hold the baton, since it was soaked with Sakamoto's saliva, which causes all the girls to hate her. Since they're not going to win anymore, Sarah decides there's no chance to impress anyone anymore, but when he sees her crying, he runs off with the baton while he takes his clothes off. This disgusts everyone except Yaji, who, like Sakamoto, knows that he did it to help her, so she was to thank him, telling him that he's cooler than he seems. Chapter 8. It's time for the cultural festival, and to celebrate it, Hayabusa and his friends are preparing a cotton candy machine, and action suggests that they invite Sakamoto, and of course, Hayabusa agrees. However, at that moment, Fukase appears, a guy who is very interested in Sakamoto, and tries to get Hayabusa to tell him about Sakamoto, but Hayabusa refuses to rat him out. Meanwhile, in Sakamoto's classroom, he puts on one of his shows using balloons, since they have to put on an exhibition for the festival. For this reason, he uses the curtains to hide a balloon sculpture, where he makes it appear that the Yeti is behind. Then he piles balloons on the ceiling of their shapes. This inspires Megumi, who places a lamp on some balloons to make it look like a UFO, but is mocked by two of her classmates at seeing such a poor attempt, until Sakamoto puts the UFO on his head and, using the static, raises his hair and generates light, making it look like a real UFO. Then those mocking boys leave when they see that they are useless. Outside the classroom, the boys are lamenting that they are not like Sakamoto, but suddenly, Fukase arrives to help them. The next day, the girls arrive at the classroom and see that all the balloons have been popped, and even worse, someone has put up posters offering a reward to capture Sakamoto and blaming him for popping the balloons. Obviously, it's Fukase's doing, who has passed all of this off as a school festival event. The girls try to defend Sakamoto, but the two useless boys arrive at the classroom feeling bad for not helping yesterday and bring lots of balloons to help fix the display. Meanwhile, Sakamoto runs away from everyone trying to catch him, making it to a play and hiding like a tree in the middle of the stage. Unfortunately, Fukase is watching the play and tells his henchmen where Sakamoto is, and they quickly corner him. However, Hayabusa and his friends arrive to confront Fukase's henchmen, and he tells Sakamoto to go with them while they distract them. After that, Hayabusa explains to Sakamoto that Fukase is over 30 years old, and his only goal is to kill time in high school, taking away the popularity from popular boys. Returning to his classroom, Sakamoto finds that they've already finished assembling the displays, and though the two useless boys say it's not his fault, Sakamoto just leaves, leaving the impression that he's guilty. After a while, a silhouette appears at the door named Akko, who admits to having destroyed all the balloons on a whim, making Megumi believe that Sakamoto is innocent, but one of the useless boys is not willing to believe that she is the culprit. Then, one of them says that the display wasn't finished when Akko destroyed the balloons, but this catches everyone else's attention, since the two of them had left before the others. So they open the door and discover that it was Sakamoto using helium. In this way, everyone finds out that the useless boys were responsible for ruining the display and finding themselves cornered. They take the Yeti sculpture hostage, but Sakamoto threatens to shoot them if they don't let go, using a balloon gun as a weapon at popping balloons, but really it was just the heat from a Kubota mirror. In the end, the two useless boys admit everything and express their sadness to see everyone having fun together yesterday, but Sakamoto makes everyone in the classroom forgive them, since they had blisters on their hands after working hard on the display today. In the end, they don't have much left to work with, but Sakamoto comes up with an idea which promotes the exhibition and Hayabusa's cotton candy shop together. Later, he crosses paths with his now rival, Fukase. Chapter 9. Days later, Megumi, Mei, and Kana gather in the schoolyard, where the best view is, and watches Sakamoto juggle dumplings. Then Megumi remembers the day she met Sakamoto. At the entrance exam, she was so cold and nervous that she couldn't write. She dropped her eraser on the ground, but just before it hit the floor, Sakamoto caught it and began to erase his paper. This made the eraser warm, and by handing it back to her, Megumi was able to finish the exam calmly, and even now she keeps the eraser as a lucky charm. On the other hand, Ame met him on a rainy day, the day of the entrance ceremony, where both of their umbrellas broke, but instead of getting frustrated, Sakamoto used his inside-out umbrella as a wine glass, and this pleased her so much that since then, she likes rainy days. Regarding Kana, she met him a day before the entrance ceremony. She had forgotten her bag and had to pile the books in her arms, ending up unable to see anything and tripping, but Sakamoto arrived in time to hold her books like a princess, making Kana take better care of her things ever since. The three realize that their moments with Sakamoto have become fond memories. Then Kubota and Sakamoto are passing by, and Kubota remembers when they both met. That day, he had a wart on his hand that he hid with a band-aid, and when it fell off, Sakamoto put it back on, making a more romantic scene than the girls. The next day, Kubota stares at Sakamoto for a long time. It turns out that a while ago, Kubota was receiving good news of his good grades together with his mother, and she finds out that Sakamoto is real and is her son's best friend. One day, Kubota falls ill and is forced to stay in bed, while his mother decides to wear her son's uniform to impersonate him, to be close to Sakamoto. Back in the present, they are in the cooking class, where not only Sakamoto stands out with his skill, but also Kubota's mother. Then Sakamoto tries her soup on a small plate, impressed with the result and giving her the plate to try as well, but Aina steals the indirect kiss, annoying Kubota's mother a lot. Then they go to physical education class, where they have to change clothes, but since she's a woman, she goes to the bathroom so as not to arouse suspicion. She has to control herself a lot, so she doesn't stay and see Sakamoto. During the class, Sakamoto runs Darwin evolution style and Kubota's mother follows him with all her strength, wanting to touch him, but in the end, she just falls to the ground, breaking her pendant. Sakamoto tries to help her up, but she sadly refuses, going to the classroom to change her clothes. Then the boys arrive, wanting to touch so badly that they settle for a boy and decide to use Kubota as their replacement. She is terrified of this, but in the end she gives up, knowing that she has no chance to be with Sakamoto, but he saves her at the last minute, giving her a chance to remember that she is Kubota's mother, and just before leaving he returns her repaired pendant, and she leaves asking him to always be friends. At home, she cooks for her son, who is already much better. Chapter 10. The Christmas season begins and two boys, named Ryu and Kohai, invite Sakamoto, who is controlling the density of the people, to a group date since one of their friends canceled at the last minute for a memorial. On the date, they meet Miki, Yuka, and Yui, who are delighted when they see Sakamoto. Then they all start talking about what they want to do in the future. While the boys know what to do, like having a bar or inheriting a family business, Sakamoto reveals that his dream is to reach NASA, knowing that the planet Earth will be habitable for humans for only 1,000 years, and he plans to find a habitable planet and carry out a mass relocation. Seeing that he is drawing a lot of attention, Ryu suggests that they play crocodile, with the penalty that whoever loses admits whether it is S or M Sakamoto loses, but with his ability, he manages to make the crocodile and the girls open to him. Because of this, Ryu is forced to use his beam up his sleeve, starting to sing and stealing attention, until Kuhai turns off the music. Although it continues to play, since Sakamoto was playing the saxophone with his arm, the two boys realize that Sakamoto is the enemy. For this reason, they order drinks that match each other's image, and for Sakamoto, they order a fizzy cola, then force him to sing and have him burp in the middle of his singing. Then Sakamoto begins singing German opera, attracting not only the girls on the date, but those outside the karaoke room. Just as he burps, he utters the words like he's a native, attracting the girls so much that they overflow the room, and Sakamoto is forced to run away from them. Sometime later, Hayabusa and his father were cooking for the little ones, and he asks his son to accompany him to meet a woman who could be his new mother, but not before asking him to learn etiquette, since they will go to eat in a French restaurant. Hayabusa doesn't want to, but he knows how important it is for his little brothers, so he goes to ask Sakamoto for help, who comes up with an idea. Sakamoto will go under a jacket, and that way he will pretend that Hayabusa is the polite one. However, at the restaurant, the woman asks Hayabusa about his robust body, and his father blurts out that he fights a lot, leaving him in a difficult position until Sakamoto saves him, making it appear that he fights for peace. In the middle of their meal, they are brought a plate of snails, and of course, Hayabusa refuses to eat them as they are too gross for him, but Sakamoto helps him again. Then the chef arrives to ask their opinion, and the woman encourages Hayabusa to say that the food was delicious in French, but he doesn't know French, so Sakamoto writes it down on a plate. At the end of dinner, the father leaves with the woman, leaving the boys alone. After that, they walk to an alley, where they find that Hayabusa's father is being attacked by and if they see Hayabusa, they will discover his identity. So he and Sakamoto switch places, fooling everyone and achieving victory with Hayabusa's body. After the fight, they both discover that the woman was an extortionist. She was in league with the But just before one of them attacks them, Hayabusa stops him, and along with an act by Sakamoto, he scares everyone, including Hayabusa's father, who faints. After this, he and Sakamoto say goodbye, leaving Hayabusa alone with his father. Chapter 11. Shortly after, the city is filled with snow, and this is the first time Sakamoto has seen so much accumulated snow, leading Kubota to think that he has lived in a city where it doesn't snow. Kubota realizes how little he knows him but doesn't care, since he will find out about it over time. Meanwhile, Akin and his friends are playing in the snow, and when they see Sakamoto, Akin invites him to play with them, teaching him to leave his shapes in the snow, together forming Leonardo da Vinci's Vitruvian Man. Then they make a snowman, and Sakamoto beats Akin again. This frustrates him since he wanted to teach him something he didn't know how to do. Out of nowhere, Fukase appears and suggests that he engage Sakamoto in a fight, and Akin agrees and challenges Sakamoto to a snowball fight. Once they get ready, Akin starts his attack quickly, trying to hit Sakamoto, but he is too fast. Then Sakamoto counterattacks, looking like a submachine, and they both wait for the other to move, coming to a standstill. Then Sakamoto throws a melting snowball at him. Action thinks it's a snowball with gunpowder. He comes out of hiding willing to risk everything in a surprise attack, losing instantly, and he finds out that Sakamoto threw a hot compress inside the snowball on him earlier. After this crushing defeat, Action returns home alone, where he cries knowing that he will never be able to beat Sakamoto, and at that moment, he bumps into Fukase, who's suggesting that everything would be better without Sakamoto. The next day in Sakamoto's classroom, Megumi shows everyone the photos she took throughout the year. One of them was taken during the rainy season. Sakamoto, seeing that the umbrellas were misplaced, decided to put them in a more artistic way, resulting in a beautiful photo, and since then, no one has misplaced their umbrellas. Then she shows them another one where Sakamoto was in the marathon, and since she couldn't photograph him, she took a photo of him when he was going to turn, where he looks like a very sick dancer. While everyone asks for a copy of the photos, Action's friends arrive to look for him, but he doesn't want to go with them because he is worried about something. Meanwhile, Hayabusa and his friends are in an emergency meeting because they will soon be going to third year, the same grade as Fukase. They start talking about rumors how smart Fukase is, but before continuing, Hayabusa asks everyone to find something they are not willing to give up or Fukase will destroy them. Then Akin's friends tell him that he has been acting strange lately. Back in the classroom, everyone is still having fun looking at the photos from the beach trip. The girls try to find a photo where Sakamoto appears in a bathing suit, but unfortunately, it could not be the case since Sakamoto submerged in the water and did not come out again. However, he appeared in a photo as the birth of Venus, making the girls and everyone else very excited, realizing how lucky they are to share a classroom with Sakamoto, and Action listens to this, frustrated. Then he goes to a hidden corner of the school where Fukase meets him and makes him see how he has changed thanks to Sakamoto, becoming less of a than he was, knowing that no matter how hard he tries, he will never catch up with Sakamoto. Therefore, he suggests getting rid of Sakamoto once and for all, and Action agrees. Chapter 12. It is time for the graduation ceremony. Sakamoto is in charge of giving the farewell speech. He goes to the podium with a ball in hand, spearing it to the ceiling and pushing another stuck ball that was there, with the reason that the graduates leave with no regrets, grabbing the attention of everyone in the room. His speech begins with Sakamoto wishing the best to the graduates and congratulating them on their departure. But while this is happening, Action arrives at the place with a metal bat, with which he frightens everyone. He goes to Sakamoto while Fukase prevents anyone from getting in the way. Then Action attacks Sakamoto, but he is not scared and evades him by continuing with his speech, while using Action to pass off everything as an act that is consistent with his speech. Sakamoto tells the students that instead of running away from their problems, they can outwit them, and that they can even indulge in a hobby when they feel scared, all while being chased by Action with his bat. The fight escalates to a high area of the room where Action tries to throw Sakamoto from the heights, but it is Action who falls. Luckily, Sakamoto catches him before he falls, but Action hits Sakamoto's hand with the bat to let him fall. Seeing this, Megumi wants to go stop him, but Kubota tells her to trust Sakamoto. Meanwhile, Action begins to cry, not understanding why Sakamoto would care so much about him, and although Sakamoto tries to let him know that he really cares about him, but Action doesn't believe it, and in the end, Sakamoto asks him to trust him, to then release him and catch him again, explaining that he must trust his friends, touching Action, seeing how far Sakamoto goes for him. In this way, Sakamoto's speech ends, and together with Hayabusa, they take Action outside, who apologizes for what happened. Knowing that it was all Fukase's doing, everyone freaks out about being next, and Sakamoto goes to the infirmary to heal his hand, finding Fukase there. Sakamoto asks what graduation is to him, to which Fukase replies that it's like a dark and dangerous sea, where if you jump in, you'll end up. That is why he enjoys so much seeing graduates with hope and seeing how they calmly go into that dangerous sea. However, Sakamoto believes that it is better to throw himself directly to the sea to find a new continent, and he leaves. Outside, he finds his friends who were about to go against Fukase. However, Sakamoto has a better idea. As the graduation ceremony is about to end, Hayabusa and his friends arrive and kneel in front of Fukase, and along with Sakamoto, throw Fukase over them, starting waves with which Fukase finally leaves his school and graduated. Sometime later, he would be seen with a surfboard on the beach. Spring arrives, and a rumor arrives at the school that turned out to be true. Sakamoto is leaving the school, he is being accepted in a Mars aerospace project, and for this reason, he will go to the United States. Because of this, his classmates start throwing cream pies at him, wanting to see him make a fool of himself even once before leaving. They all have their last game together, and they promise Sakamoto that they will work hard to see him again. However, no one manages to reach him with the cream pies, and he keeps the last pie. Just before leaving, Hayabusa says goodbye, knowing that he won't be going to the United States. When he leaves school, he sees how all of his friends say goodbye to him, and just before going out the door, he throws the cream pie at his face, making himself unrecognizable in front of Professor Kakuta. OVA. Shortly after, Komodo wants to make a Sakamoto movie and makes a preview, which shows some of Sakamoto's adventures in school, showing how he was always the center of attention. However, Akshid and company are upset that instead of a movie, it looks like a compilation special. Suddenly, Aina and her friends arrive, and upon hearing that they want to make a Sakamoto movie, Aina suggests they use her scenes with him and make it a love story between her and Sakamoto. However, when Yaji confronts her, Aina tells her that if they used her scenes from the sports festival, the love story would be between Yaji and Sarah. Then Megumi and the others arrive, where she begins to think that she would make the movie with her scenes, having as a plot the hobby of photographing Sakamoto, without forgetting what happened with the ghost, but it would be a horror movie. Finally, Yasuda and Morita arrive, the useless of the cultural festival, who suggest making a movie with them, but they had so few scenes that it doesn't seem to make sense. In the end, they decide to start the actual episode before they get scolded. This is how we move to Sakamoto's former class, where everyone has already returned to their daily lives, but nothing compares to living with Sakamoto. Meanwhile, Sarah tries to impress the girls by being a model, but he is again overshadowed by a news where Sakamoto appears in the United States, surprising everyone, especially Action, who remembers when Sakamoto saved him and taught him to trust his friends. Everyone wonders what Sakamoto is doing in the United States. Sakamoto has been having the same experiences at NASEC from his new colleagues, but this time he surpasses them all in the purest American style. In this way, he not only draws everyone's attention, but also earns the hatred of the who decide to go directly to beat him up. So the next day, they tamper with one of the test machines, causing it to spin so fast and non-stop that Sakamoto gets trapped, but also knocks the machine out of place, causing it to spin in their direction. Just before something happens, the machine stops since Sakamoto has been spinning himself to counter the force of the machine, leaving him in a Buddha-like position. However, this was all a fantasy of Megumi. Now it's Action's turn, who imagines Sakamoto on Mars with a bunch of Martians. However, there is no such thing, but still, Action knows that Sakamoto must be doing great things, leaving everyone even more intrigued to find out what is going on. Meanwhile, Sakamoto was attending a rocket launch, where he quickly lifts off, but one of the fuel tanks leaks, forcing them to abort the mission. Then Sakamoto begins to maneuver the rocket, managing to stabilize it, and writes his characteristic, "I'm Sakamoto, in the sky, and then say goodbye, flying to infinity and beyond."